Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Prize Podcast, where we talk about how sports and the Christian worldview intersect one another. It's good to have you back on the show. My name is Kyle Hunsinger, and I know we had basically had a hiatus essentially for a while because I had been out last week. I did not record because I was not feeling good. I was very sick last week. The previous week we were out because we were into Thanksgiving and all those things going down. So I didn't record an episode, but now we're back. I'm going to try to record obviously today and then one for next week. And then we will come back in January full steam ahead. My hope is next week we'll be able to go more in detail on all the bowl games and some of my predictions on that. I'll probably just do a show where it's just based off of all the bowl games and all the different stuff that's going to go on for the national championship. I may even do a reaction show to the New Year's Eve and all the different playoff games. We'll just kind of have to wait and see how the road goes moving forward. But I'm Kyle Hunsinger. I am one of the pastors here at Chapin Baptist Church. I'm the student pastor. And I have a podcast weekly where I usually try to record on Thursdays. It's called the Prize Podcast, where we talk about how sports and the Christian worldview intersect one another. And man, do we have some massive news, giving you a little bit of a hint about what I'm wearing today, why it is massive news, not just for sports in general, but for myself. It's humongous news for a team that I pull for. But before we get into any of that, I just want to remind everyone that if you would like to email me, you can email me at pursuetheprize@gmail.com, or it's essentially just pursuetheprize@gmail.com. If you have any questions about the show from there, you can also you can also follow me on Instagram. And look at me through there. Just look up Kyle Hunsinger. I'm on that, or K Hunsinger 50. And then if you go to X, I'm also on there. I don't really post a lot. I don't post a ton on there. But if I get on it and I see you message me or you mention me in something, I will be sure to try to get back with you. All right, a lot of news to cover today. First bit of news that I want to cover two minor things that we'll go some basketball and we'll go some baseball, and then we'll go into football the rest of the show. Baseball news: Juan Soto, some of you may know where this is going, signed and inked a deal with the New York Mets for $765 million. Man, that's a lot of money. By the statistics that I looked at this week, he is the highest paid athlete currently. He was very instrumental in the New York Yankees' run to the World Series. Unfortunately, the Yankees did not win the World Series because, let's just face it, the Los Angeles Dodgers were a better team, and they also played smarter baseball, and that's how they won that World Series. I hate to say that because I'm a Yankees fan, but that's what happened. A lot of debate on his salary. I have listened to ESPN a lot more this week because I was sick, and my time was a little bit more free to kind of look up some more sporting news. On ESPN recently, this past week on Monday, there was a lot of chatter about, is this fair that a baseball player is making this much money and then the football players are not? I think that's an irrelevant question because money and finances are not necessarily fair in how they're distributed in any sport. I mean, we were talking about this with women's sports. Women's sports make less money than men's sports. Now, women's basketball is starting to make a run where they are making more money. I think a lot of that's been because the talent pool has gotten better. The basketball play, let's be honest, is more fundamentally better than even some of the men's play, because the men's play, let's just face it, all it is you're getting across on the outskirts and spreading your offense out. You have one person underneath, and essentially it's pretty much drive, pass, drive, pass, or you just go dribble up in front of the court and shoot a three. I mean, that's pretty much how it goes. It's kind of like if you shoot a two, shooting a two isn't really acceptable as much anymore. You either dunk it or you shoot a three. There was even a thing that came out that I thought was funny was they were talking about making dunks where dunks count more points, which I'm like, okay, whatever. But just kind of goes to show you kind of where NBA is going right now. So with that being said, there was a lot of different things on topics on, okay, is this fair? Okay, whatever. I think the key thing to take away from this is baseball has this unbelievable amount of money that it generates. The NFL does have a lot of money that generates. The problem is the owners have a lot more of this type of closed fist over that money. And the other aspect of it is that there's a lot more liability in football. Baseball, yeah, there's injuries. No one's saying that baseball isn't a tough sport. There's a lot of games. It is a ton of games. I think there's too many games. That's my opinion, but that's just why I never really get into baseball a ton, because just it's so many games to keep up with. But I know people who get into it, and God bless them. I mean, they're the best fans known to mankind. Baseball fans are good fans. They're great fans. So with that being said, just to kind of give some perspective, Patrick Mahomes, his salary I think is like $200 million less or $300 million less than this. I'm not accurate on that, but I know it's less than what Juan Soto makes, and the licks that he has taken as a quarterback is definitely different than what Juan Soto would take, I guess you would say, with attrition on his body or whatever. So definitely a high number, but it also means that the New York Mets meant business. And that's the key, is that you have a group investing money into a product. And I don't want to term it that way to make it just seem like the player's the product, but they are the product on the field. Their talent is what you're putting your money towards. And so for them, they're thinking, okay, we're going to put money into this guy and we're going to make sure that he is on our team. And we think with him, we can be a better team. New York Mets are a decent team. I think with him added, they definitely have upped up their level to where now they could potentially make a playoff run to the World Series. Now, you still got to go through Atlanta if Atlanta's good this year, and then you still got to go through the Phillies. The Phillies were great last year. Phillies didn't go very far, but still, you got to go through those two teams. Those are still good franchises that you have to really walk through and see, okay, can you beat them? I think Juan Soto helps them out with that. That's my baseball news. The NBA Cup champs has not been announced yet because that's not happened yet. But there is a Final Four that is taking place. The Milwaukee Bucks will play the Atlanta Hawks. Oddly enough, the Hawks have done pretty good. I think they beat the Los Angeles Lakers. No, they didn't, because that's the East side of the bracket. I think they played the Lakers a recent, and they ended up winning. I can't remember if it was an NBA Cup game. I don't think it was, because, again, these are two East teams versus two West teams. So whoever wins that will go to the finals. So you got the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Atlanta Hawks. Obviously, Giannis is a big one for the Bucks. The Hawks, you got what's his face? Can't even remember his name right now. I'll remember it later. Oklahoma guy, point guard, got funny hair. And he's a good player. He's a very, 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 very good player. Then you got the Thunder, who they just play big guys and they don't accept anybody below the height of 6'4". Rockets beat the Golden State Warriors last night. Now, the Golden State Warriors are not the same Golden State Warriors of years past, but still a pretty significant win for them. And so Thunder and Rockets will play each other, and this will decide who gets to go into the championship round. So take that into account. Predominantly some younger teams that are in these matchups that have gone to the NBA Cup. So Lakers are not in it. LeBron, sorry, you can't win a NBA Cup championship. I hate to break that to you. So next two bits of big news. Let's go to Why don't we do this? Let's go to, it's going to be loud. We're ready. Are you ready? Okay. So we are going to go to the college football playoffs. If I can get this music down. We're going to go to the college football playoffs now. College football playoffs. A lot of controversy on that. What? Controversy for the college football playoffs? Yep. I've got the bracket in front of me right here. In case you did not see the selection show, which I think every guy who is interested in college football has been watching and really looking into this. We have the number 1 seed, the Oregon Ducks. They will play the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee. So what that means is Ohio State will is actually hosting that game. I don't know why they have them on the top thing. I guess they have them on top because they're the top seed, but it does give you some perspective that they are going to play. Tennessee's going to play at Ohio State, which will be pretty interesting to see how the weather's like in, I think it's like December 20th and 21st is when the games are played. First round games. So one of them are going to play in the second, or one of those two teams are going to play. They're going to go to the second round. They'll play Oregon. That'll be their consolation prize. You get to play the number 1 team who's undefeated. Then also on that same side of the bracket, you have Texas, and Clemson has to go to Texas and play at Texas. That's going to be a tough game for Clemson. Now, wait, Clemson? Didn't they just lose to South Carolina Gamecocks? Yeah, they did. But they hit a 56-yard field goal in the ACC championship, getting the ACC automatic bid because that's the rules. So for Clemson fans, there's some people like, well, they don't deserve to be in the playoffs. Well, no, they don't. But according to the rules, they, on the other hand, are deserving to be in the playoffs. And so by those standards, that's where they get to go. They get to go be a part of the playoffs. So I think that's a pretty incredible thing for them. I'm sure Clemson fans are definitely excited about that, but you got to go play at Texas, which will be a pretty wild thing to see those two oranges come together. That's probably gonna be the ugliest sight I've ever seen in my life. Sorry, Clemson fans. Sorry, Texas fans. But listen, you put y'all's orange and their orange together, it gonna be ugly. It ain't gonna complement each other one bit. But what I'm looking forward to in this game is, can Clemson's defense and even some of their offense, because they got to get healed up really quick, can they be good enough to make it interesting against Texas? Now, Clemson, when they played Georgia at the beginning of the year, they kept it interesting in the first half, and then they fell apart. It was kind of like they held it all in. They were trying to make it where it was a close game. Then the straw broke the camel's back, and then it was a blowout. Will that happen again? Now, Texas lost to Georgia the second time around in the SEC championship. So with that being said, going into the other side of the bracket, you got Georgia, who's the number 2 seed. They get in because they got the SEC championship automatic bid that way. And they were already a top 5 team anyways. I think they were number 5 the week prior. They will play the winner of the Indiana Classic of Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Indiana Hoosiers. And who would have thought the Indiana Hoosiers would have been here? But they are the 10 seed, and they're going to play at Notre Dame. They're going to play at Rudy's place. So that will be interesting to see how that plays out. I think Notre Dame is going to win. I think they are the tougher team. I think they are very good right now. Now, when they play Georgia, I think Georgia's going to wipe them off the map, because I think Georgia, for some reason, is being Georgia at the right moment. They're playing really good right now. So we'll see if they continue moving forward. And we're going to see who Georgia's quarterback is going to be. Is it going to be Carson Beck with the bum, elbow, arm, whatever he's got going on? I don't even know really what his injury really is. Or is it going to be Gunnar Stockton, who was the former South Carolina guy that was going to go to South Carolina, but he ended up going to Georgia? And he did okay. He did pretty good, I think. But, if he's practicing and getting all the snaps, that's going to be the key thing for them, is figuring all that out moving forward. Then you go into the third seed being Boise State, which, by the way, on the Texas Clemson side, they will play the winner of Arizona State. That's dadgummit, I forget the guy's name who's the coach there. Anyways, doesn't matter for this moment because I'm just talking about brackets. Boise State, they're going to play the winner of Penn State and SMU. Now, this has been the tricky part. Penn State, definitely a decent team. But SMU got that final 11 seed. So there was all this controversy. If you watch the ESPN selection show, Alabama needs to get in because their schedule was tougher and they have a better overall, strength of schedule. Well, how can you say that? Because you got up on the thing and they said, SMU, that you're not going to penalize the team because they're in the conference championship. I agree with a couple different people that I listened to this past week, one of them being Jones Angel and Adam Lucas on Carolina Insider. I listened to them a lot and also listened to a couple of guys on ESPN. Was Alabama deserving of going into the college football playoff? Sure. Based off the rules, yes. Was SMU deserving of going into the college football playoffs? Yes. Based off of the criteria and rules, they were deserving. And let's not, if SMU gets blown out by Clemson, I think there's a different story there. But it was a close game. Clemson had to win by a 56-yard field goal. Okay? Then we're not even talking about this. Then if SMU wins, Alabama might get in. Now, with that being said, I also think South Carolina's on the background, and they're out on the other side of the border looking into the college football playoff saying, hey, what about us? We beat the ACC champion. And, by the way, Alabama, y'all lost to Vanderbilt. Your best team that you lost to is Tennessee. And then, not even to add that, you got spanked by Oklahoma. That's what the South Carolina fans are saying and the Ole Miss fans. But then the Ole Miss fans are like, well, South Carolina lost to LSU. LSU didn't turn out to be really that good. They got beat by Alabama, so that rules them out of, maybe being ahead of Alabama in that spot. But then they look at South Carolina and say, well, we beat them. So we beat them in the head-to-head. And then Alabama fans can say, well, we beat South Carolina in the head-to-head, and we have this many good wins. We beat Georgia, and Georgia's the SEC champion. So regardless, here's my thoughts on it. I think the selection shows are dumb. And I believe that. They're dumb. They need to stop doing them. Because you're basically making yourself parameters that are not needed. So, like, for instance, there is no way in God's green earth that Boise State and Arizona State should be the 3 and 4 seed. I think you can still do the automatic bids of winning your conference championship for the certain power 4, power 2, whatever they are. You can still do those, but just rank them how they should be. Because, for example, you got Penn State playing SMU, okay? Penn State will probably win that game. I think they will. They may not. But let's just say Penn State wins that game. Then they get to play Boise State. That's a lot different from Ohio. Let's say you're Ohio State here. You got to play, or actually, let's do this. You're Tennessee. You're Tennessee, you got to go to Ohio State to play in December. You don't know what the weather's going to be like there. Let's say by chance you do beat Ohio State there. Well, then the next week you got to go win a game against Oregon in a neutral site location. And that's the other thing about Oregon. Oregon's the number 1 seed, and they got to play at a neutral site. What is their consolation for being the number 1, or what's their incentive for being a number 1 seed? To me, it seems to me that those second round matchups, the quarterfinals, should be home games. Wouldn't that benefit Georgia fans and Boise State? I mean, Boise State fans, these are guys that were in it. If you're a Boise State fan, you've been at it since the beginning whenever they beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl years ago. And you're looking at that. I mean, that is so crazy to me. Same thing for Arizona State. So this is where we're at college football. Doing things like this that doesn't make sense. The 12-team playoff is great. I think this is exciting, but we're still answering the question, well, who's deserving and who should be these seeds and blah, blah, blah. But we're putting certain parameters on how it should be and what should be these certain ways. And it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be that way. There are certain things that are easy, low-hanging fruit that you can fix. And these are some things you can fix. So that's my take on the bracket. Who do I think is going to win the whole thing? I don't know. I do not think that. I just don't trust Texas. I don't. Georgia has not been 100%. Do I think Georgia's still good? Absolutely. Do I think they're the best team? I don't know about that. But it seems to me that Oregon's pretty darn good. So I really believe that I think it's going to end up being Oregon and Georgia at the end of it. But I mean, hey, if you're on the right side of the bracket, the best team in that's Georgia. But listen to all these other teams on the right side. Notre Dame. I mean, I could make an argument that Notre Dame is the second best team on this bracket. I mean, SMU's a fine football team. Penn State's fine. Boise State's good. Indiana's good. I don't think Indiana's better than Notre Dame. They might beat them. Okay, good. But is Indiana better than Penn State? Are they better than SMU? Or Boise State? I mean, is Boise State better than any of those other teams? We don't know. But it just seems to me that you got that side, and then you got the other side stacked with, regardless of what you want to say about Clemson, Clemson's Clemson. They still can do some things. It's a brand new season. The old, it talks about in the Bible, the old has passed away, the new has come. This is the new. So you just really don't know. But it just seems to me the most likely to be Oregon versus Georgia. So I'm going to pick that. I'll go with that. And you can take that to the bank. Now, with that being said, and I've got to finish this up because I got to watch the press conference for this because I'm super excited, but I think this is really interesting. UNC has found a new head coach, and it's none other than Bill Belichick, 6-time Super Bowl winning champion coach. I think this hire is wild to me. So when I first heard this news, okay, and if you're listening in, I'm a humongous North Carolina Tar Heel fan. Humongous fan. And when I heard this news, I thought, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why are they even entertaining this? But supposedly Bill Belichick was the one that reached out to them through the sources that I've read. And by the way, just saying, when I say sources, I did not go personally to get these sources. Like I'm not going to, like I read other articles from other sources, but I'm not going to release any hidden information because that's not, like at least not through this avenue, because that's not fair to those places. I will only say the things that have already been reported publicly. Bill Belichick then has another meeting, but they meet with some of the UNC leadership in New York City or in New York for 5 hours. Then on Monday, I watched the Pat McAfee show, and he is on Pat McAfee, and it's the if I run a college program, I will run it like an NFL corporation or NFL business, essentially, is what he said. That's not verbatim, but that's pretty much what he said. So then it's becoming more of a reality. And how we get here is because Mack Brown, a college football legend, was fired by the school not because he didn't do a great job. Mack Brown did a good job. I mean, he took a team that had 4 wins in 2 seasons from 2017, 2018, and then made him a good team, but he couldn't get him over the hump to be a great team. Not all of that's his fault. I don't think UNC leadership was totally bought in on football. They've never been totally bought in on football. Just to give y'all some perspective who don't know about North Carolina football, or maybe who has, it's always the typical thing when people hear UNC football, they're like, well, that's just kind of like a secondary or tertiary thing. UNC basketball is number one. For a long time it has been. But here's the problem. Other sports can't be primary because football has to be primary because football is where the money's at. That's with any sport. Case in point, I watched Alabama play North Carolina in basketball. 10 years ago, if Alabama plays North Carolina basketball, North Carolina wipes them off the map. It wouldn't even be close. And I'm even trying to think through this. This is 2024, 20. Yeah, it wouldn't have been close. Would have kicked their rear end. But now, Alabama, guess what they have? They have SEC money and they have football money. Well, guess what that does for you? That gives you more revenue. That gives you more NIL money. That gives you more positions to hire people on your teams. That's because of football. So then what does that do? That wealth, that stewardship of wealth gets transferred over to everything else, including basketball. So my point being made, I watched Alabama wipe the floor with North Carolina in basketball a couple weeks ago. It was on December the 4th on a Wednesday night in Chapel Hill, like in the Dean Smith Center. And if you don't know anything about the Dean Smith Center, that is like UNC basketball, or that's like basketball heaven, kind of like how Allen Fogg Fieldhouse for Kansas is. That is the place. I've been there several times. It's the grandeur. It's the magic. You got Michael Jordan. You got James Worthy. You've got Tyler Hansbrough. You got all of it. Vince Carter, Antoine Jameson, you name it. Sam Perkins. You go through all the list. Rasheed Wallace, Jerry Stackhouse. All of them are all up there. They're up there in the rafters for you to look at. And that's the thing you see. And they got whipped in their own house. Why? Number one, Nate Oates said it best. They have more money right now. Number two, they have the personnel to be able to look at some of those situations, say, how can we have a leg up on North Carolina? Well, they showed that. They had personnel to be able to look at their plays and to be able to designate that play to the opposing staff or to their staff. So they knew what North Carolina was doing. Is there anything wrong with that? Not in the current football climate. Do I think it's fair? No, I don't think it's necessarily fair, but that's the reality we live in college sports. You live in a world that's not fair. That's very much a Christian mindset we have to think through. Is as Christians in general, we live in a world that's not fair. But we do have a God that is over all of it and is sovereign all of it, and he is fair in his judgment. So regardless of the unfairness of the world, we have a God who is fair, and he will deal with justice the way it is. That's a side point, but that's just a little nugget I want to add into the midst of this sporting news. So you've got that. You got all those pieces. So that my primary point of this with leading to Bill Belichick UNC is that college football, or football in general, is where the money's at. And if you don't invest in it, you're behind. UNC took one of the biggest steps in their culture by saying, we're making football primary, and we're doing it by this hire. It's more than just Bill Belichick. It's more than just, hey, he's the greatest coach of all time, we're going to put him in as the head coach. Yes. Does that add a lot of pedigree to the program? Yes. Does that make it an attractional spot for big-time players? Yes. Does that mean that North Carolina is going to win a national championship because of this? No, it does not. Could they be a college football playoff contender? I think they've gotten closer. Now, a lot of people have concerns. He's 70-something years old. What's he going to do when he has to recruit players in their homes and has to talk to their families? Guess what, guys? He didn't have to do that. He don't have to. Do you know that most coaches don't do that anymore? A lot of them don't even go in players' homes anymore. They get these other guys that they hire as recruiting analysts and recruiters that go into the homes and they do the dirty work for them. Because guess what? A lot of those players, they don't care except for you saying, hey, this is how much money I can give to you, whether good or bad. That's what's going on in the current climate of college football. Is it what's best for college football? I don't think it is. But I do believe we have to operate in a way within the bounds and the canon of the rules in the current climate without being negligent, without having, making sure we maintain integrity, essentially. So this is a splash hire. I mean, you go from Mac Brown, legend, to Bill Belichick, Super Bowl six-time Super Bowl champion, led Tom Brady and the Patriots to several Super Bowl championships. And he's going to bring all this money and revenue, and they're doubling they're massively increasing the NIL budget. This is culture shifting. What's going on? That a guy that would be this high in stature says, I want to come to lowly, no good North Carolina football. Nobody was talking about North Carolina football big time. I mean, yeah, we had Mac Brown, and there was some spots here and there. We had Drake May go in the draft and Sam Howell, and you got some players like Javonte Williams and Michael Carter did some splashes in the NFL. Okay, that's good. But for the most part, if you were talking to people about where you want to go play football, you're talking about the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Oregons, the Clemsons, all these teams. North Carolina went on the list. You think they're on the list now? I think they are. Does it make me excited as a fan? Absolutely, it makes me excited as a fan. Does it guarantee anything? No, it doesn't guarantee anything. But what this hire shows to me is that, again, this is a shift in culture and a part where North Carolina, as the football program and as the school, is saying, all right, you have control and make this what it needs to be. You do what you need to do. We're going to trust you with it, and we're going to move forward this way because we believe this is important. This is priority. So that's where we transition to the Christian worldview perspective on this. Couple different things I want to highlight is stewardship and wealth. By the way, Merry Christmas to everyone that's listening to this show today. I hope to have another episode for you next week. We'll see what happens. But by the way, thank you for joining in on the show. I appreciate you you listening in. Again, if you have any comments or anything, pursuetheprize@gmail.com. But my last thought is this, and this is where we'll go into the Christian worldview for today, is you have this idea in Scripture of God turning the tables in the Old Testament. One of the things that I'm going to be preaching to Chapin Baptist Church, the congregation that I serve at, is about God turning the tables. One of those examples that I saw was when I was studying Exodus, is that God was using the people of Israel who were considered low. They were many in numbers, but they were under the control of a hierarchy of the Egyptian government, Pharaoh, and really ultimately the enemy's power. God, being good, says he's bigger than all of that. He comes down into it and says, I'm going to deliver you. They don't trust it. And so God has to prove it to them. And he does so by delivering his people. He does so much that they respond in joy and in song. It even refers these couple different things that they now, in response to the Red Sea incident where God parts the Red Sea and he brings his people out, He says, you're my salvation, you're my song, you're my savior, you're my God, you're my father's God. That term, my father's God, is basically saying you're the God of my fathers that they worshiped. It's a generational thing now. Like, as Christians, we want to be careful because we don't want to just say, oh, well, we worship God because daddy worshiped God. Like, that's kind of a Southern thing sometimes. Like, well, we go to church because my mamaw hunt singer, she went to church back in the day, so that's where we go. There can be some good to that, I guess, but the most important part I tell teenagers all the time is you take ownership of your faith. You sing your song of faith. It's not just your mom's faith or your dad's faith. It's your faith you take ownership of. And so what the people of Israel are saying is like, you are the God of my fathers, from my father's generation, from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And we're seeing that come to fruition, that you made your promise to them and you're carrying that through us. And we're taking ownership of that promise now because you've purchased us. You have shifted our journey moving forward. Now, let me make this very clear. I'm not saying these individuals that Juan Soto is God, or that, some of these college football teams that are shifting culture, or even the Bill Belichick situation that, it's, he's bringing a savior complex. I don't believe he's saving the program, but I do believe that he's bringing it to another level by some of the things that he brings in. But God himself is above and beyond anything this world has to offer, and he comes in saving us by his grace. Like we couldn't offer God enough praise and enough anything that we have for him to be like, okay, I'll accept your offer and I'll come and save you. That's not how it worked. God, for free. Now, there was a response of worship that had to happen. They had to obey the Lord, and the Lord would make that clear by establishing the law and all that. But God makes it possible by just grace. It's by grace he saved us so that what? No one may boast. That's what God does for us. He does it for his glory, most importantly, but he does it for us so that we can sing. Well, guess what? What better song to sing than the Song of Moses this Christmas? Exodus 15. In fact, it's very similar to the song that Mary sings in Luke 1, when she knows that God has delivered on his promise from generations ago. He delivered on his promise from her father's God, her generations' fathers of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, through Joseph's line, comes this baby that would be born, the son of David, the ultimate son, the son of David, the one that will sit on the throne forever, the one that is going to do all things possible to be our salvation and our Savior and our God, my God, your God. Well, how does he make that possible? He makes that possible by coming down from his throne and from who he is and his exaltation, and he humbles himself by what? Becoming a baby. So God, 100% of himself, all of himself, comes in the form of 100% man, 100% baby, and grows and matures in stature and wisdom. But he never loses perfection. He never loses his godness. He continues to grow up, and he lives a perfect life. He does everything he's supposed to do, and he does it right. And he does it out of love. He does it out of his steadfast love. His hesed. He does it out of steadfast, unending love for the people he loves, even though they may reject him. God did not just do something culture shifting. He did something of seismic shifting, seismic event. When we think about the birth of Jesus Day, it is a seismic cosmic event that shapes everything about not just here, but here and in your life. And then therefore it affects how we give, it affects how we do our serve and how we embrace life and what's ultimately priority for us. Jesus established his priority by going to the cross for our sin. His priority to God the Father ultimately, but his priority to save his people. And he did that by not just dying on the cross, but rising from the grave 3 days later. And now he's given us a home, and he's given us that assurance that goes beyond generational wealth. It's spiritual wealth. It's eternal wealth. That's better than NIL. It's better than a $765 million contract. And I pray and hope you would embrace that as you think about that this Christmas season. Thank you for joining in on the Prize Podcast. I know it was a longer episode, but I'm glad you joined in. I hope that you have a great Thursday and beyond. If you're listening to this on a separate day, that doesn't matter. I'm so glad you got to join in on the show. If you'd like to know more information about me, again, pursuetheprize@gmail.com, or you can go on X at KMoneyDH, or you can get on Instagram, KHuntsinger50, or just look up Kyle Huntsinger. Have a wonderful day. Stay warm, and I'll see you next time for another episode of the Prize Podcast. See you later.